bottom line is, yeah, I do think that will happen. I do think there will come a day where getting precious metals becomes impossible, and it'll happen just like that. Well, our business originally was founded on Swiss franc investments. We were one of the only custodians in North America representing the Swiss insurance industry. And I spent 2 summers in Zurich when I was 20 and 21 learning from Swiss bankers. And we had a large list of clients that Doug Casey and Gary North were very prominent back then in talking about the virtues of Swiss annuities. And fortunately, we were one of only 2 contacts, really in North America that had access to these products.
Gary North, Gary North of the guy, Gary North of the Mises Institute.
He's been around. He was very prevalent back then. I don't remember.
He's the one who wrote this economic history of the Bible or something like that.
I don't know if that was him or not. You have to forgive me because you're talking literally 30 years ago. But he was a prominent newsletter writer who talked about geopolitical events. If you told me he's that guy, I wouldn't be surprised, but I can't substantiate. But back then, there was no internet, there was no computers. You would get a big box full of mailing labels and mail them out a newsletter. But I learned very early on in spending time with Swiss bankers and in spending time talking about Swiss francs and the Swiss insurance industry that was built on soundness. It was a few hundred years old. It had never seen an insurance company fail. You were talking about the Swiss franc, which had a history of being linked to gold and sound money. And well, I realized very early that the same person who bought gold bought Swiss francs. And my father came from the precious metals industry. He was the representative.
Real world asset wealth: how to protect your wealth from the upcoming financial impact. Download this brand new report for free and get instant access to our resources. Click the button below the video now.
Of a company where he was tasked with speaking around the world on the virtues of precious metals and the economic realities surrounding it. And when we started the company, I was 20 years old. He said to me, "There's only going to be one rule only, and I'll fire you if you don't oblige by it." I said, 20 years old. All right, Dad, I can deal with that. And this really, Rafi, sets the foundation for the way that I look at metals. Because he said to me, "You'll buy something, gold or silver, with every paycheck, or I'll fire you." All right, cool. So every 2 weeks for 34 years, I've honored my promise to my father. I've been the owner almost outright, I guess you could say, and the president of the company for 2 decades. I've never not purchased something on a 2-week pay cycle. I've honored my promise. He won't fire me anymore, but it's something that I think is the greatest gift he's ever given me. And he taught me what gold and silver truly are, that they are wealth that have outlived everything the world's ever thrown at it, from hyperinflation in Germany to the Great Depression to 2 world wars to every pandemic. And it built a foundation of understanding that through the years has morphed into something more in terms of where we are now in the economic cycles. But to this day, I will tell you that the gold and silver I own is not an investment. It's my wealth. And if you own enough of it, you'll be wealthy. But when I talk to people, I don't tell them you buy this to become wealthy. I say you buy this because it is wealth. And going back all the way to the Bible, for 5,000 years, it has been considered such by pharaohs and kings and queens and emperors and anyone of nobility. So to me, it is money. And as J.P. Morgan famously said, everything else is credit. But that is the truth, that I started early with the understanding that this is something that I was supposed to save and accumulate in a very methodical, habitual fashion. And as time has gone by and I have a broader understanding of economics and of the world, certainly I look at things slightly different. But to this day, to me, gold and silver are purely wealth. And that's really the foundation of my understanding and the way that I talk to people about it. I think that's the way part of the world is looking at it right now. I think they're looking at it as a savings bond, because in a historical context, using another country's debt as an asset has a very small window of history behind it. And like you said, if you go back to 2000, S&P's averaged 7% per year. Gold has averaged 7.8% per year. It's outpaced it. If you look at the bond market, it's killed it. And if you just look over over the last few years, it's done the exact same thing. It's outpacing just about everything and moving in a way that I think you could argue is very slow and steady. Like, for example, in 2020, the average price of gold was 1773. In 2021, the average price was 1798. In 2022, it was 1801. In 2023, 1943. Now, you could argue that it should be higher, or whatever you want to say, but it's doing its job, and it is slowly winning the race. In the end, the tortoise won the race, and I think that's what you see here. And you can go back and pick any time period and look at it in terms of what it purchased you then and what it purchases you now, and you'll see it's remarkably stable, and it retains your standard of living or your purchasing power over an extended period of time. The problem is too many people have grown accustomed to instant gratification not being fast enough, and I think that's why gold is something that when you inject the volatility that we see typically in the metals markets, it's something that gets really unnoticed by the majority of people because it's not flashy. It doesn't move at breakneck speed and doesn't pay any interest. And there's really been a whitewashing of what gold really is. So to me, it is better than a U.S. Treasury because you don't have the default risk. It's an asset that is not simultaneously the liability of anyone else. So I think that's how part of the world is beginning to look at gold as they shed treasuries and look at gold for what it's always been, and that is a supreme store of value, and a very liquid one at that. Well, in 2008, I really became aware that the markets were manipulated, and there was, in my mind, there was absolutely no doubt that the markets were being controlled by the derivatives on the exchanges. And so in 2008, let's just suspend the fact that we're talking about gold and silver. We'll call it investment A and investment B. Investment A fell from 1,000 to 700, and investment B from 21 to 9 in the period of roughly a week. And whatever those investments are, I don't care if they're stocks, bonds, real estate, or metals. If I told you that in a span of a week, investment A fell by 35%, and investment B by almost 65%, I think it would be pretty easy. You don't have to be an economist to say, yeah, there's no demand for that. People are selling. There should be an overwhelming amount of supply on the market as everyone's dumping it as the price is cascading. But it couldn't have been further from the truth. And my eyes really opened up at this point because we see at that point, every major mint in the world, when this happened, within 1 week of it happening, was sold out of product. The U.S. mint was 12 to 18 weeks back ordered and told us we could place no orders at all for a couple of months. The 2008, yes. Right.